Hello, this is the Hermetic Hipster, and thank you for coming to my channel. Firstly, sorry again for not uploading in a while, but today I have the first in a series of videos that I will look into more depth at one of the 9 mystic traditions in each one. I will do union conventions and crafts after this, but I will stick with the more popular traditions for now. If you would like to help decide what video would come next in typical YouTube manner, leave a comment below for the video of the tradition that you would like me to do, and I shall try and get it out of the most popular one that is voted for. My friends in the virtual adepts have also informed me that only 15% of my viewers from my channel have subscribed, so if you want to see more mage content and give the channel a vote of confidence, please do click the sub button. Pandering calls to action aside, let's talk about the first of the mystic traditions I have chosen, the Akashic Brotherhood. The Akashic Brotherhood, or Akashiana, or just Akashics, are one of the most easily recognisable traditions, in that they embody an extremely famous and admired trope, that of the warrior monk. I will talk about this stereotype a bit more later, but for now let's bear in mind that when it comes to the typical Akashics, the tradition's close ties to this image is a double-edged sword. The Akashics are one of the dominant traditions from Asia, with their power base being in places like China, Japan, Korea, Southeast Asia, and most importantly, Tibet and Nepal in the Himalayas. They're, in my opinion, one of the most traditional of the traditions, with culture and practices going back at least a few thousand years, and longer if you take their own myths literally. They strive for personal discipline and discovery, and are one of the awakened groups that take the idea of ascension most seriously, valuing simplicity and discarding life's distractions in its pursuit. Ascetic meditation, physical conditioning, and immersion in ancient philosophies gives the Akashiana a difficult and trying path to enlightenment, but one that serves them well for the realities of the world of darkness. They have ancient institutions, with monasteries, doctrines, and practices being as old as any, but paradoxically are also very personally individualistic, teaching that each mage's road to enlightenment is unique and distinct. Young Akashics coming up through the ranks will find themselves well supported by structures and protocols, but also encouraged to have the freedom and independence to discover their own beliefs and powers. A powerful result of this handed down knowledge is the practice of Do, also known as the Way. This manifests in the game as a magical martial art, but in the lore is much more than that. It's an all-encompassing practice of self-discipline and awareness that guides the Akashic through their life. In-game, it offers amazing abilities as you grow in its ranks, with powers ranging from lethal damage for brawl attacks to being able to jump many meters into the air. If you've seen it in a Hong Kong blockbuster, then Do lets you do it. An old GM of mine had a really good system for this, where you had to sign and attribute to 8 of the virtues of Do, and your score in Do could never be higher than any of them. This encouraged warrior monks not just to focus on fighting, but also meditation, etiquette, and personal hobbies, similar to a samurai writing poetry or a flower arranging, meaning that you had to be all-round enlightened and balanced to advance in your powers as a practitioner of the Way. The history of the Akashics is a long one, as ancient as any tradition, and although many traditions can trace their roots to ancient groups, the Akashics have been an organised group for millennia. According to their own myths, they were originally from Mount Meru, a utopian place of perfect harmony, similar to our understanding of Shangri-La. When either cast down or fled from the mountain's destruction, they entered the ancient world, where they learned practical skills such as medicine and warfare, and began codifying their beliefs. The most important event in ancient Akashic history are the centuries-long Himalayan wars against the Chakravanti, known today as the Uthanatoi. The two groups had a similar origin and philosophies, but varied greatly on doctrine and practice, leading to strange relations between them. But the Chakravanti were not yet as unified or as organised as the Akashics. The wars themselves were ignited when a death cultist was found killing plague victims by a group of Akashic monks, according to the cultist, to stop the spread of the plague. This sparked a fight between the two groups, as the Akashic only saw a murderer, and as things do, the violence escalated to consume both sects. At first, the more organised Akashics slaughtered death cultists across the north of the Indian subcontinent. It's worth noting that although I've chosen the term death cultists, a term that has seriously evil connotations, these death cultists were not evil, but as the Chakravanti now practice, see death as part of the cycle and a step towards it. These death mystics unified in the face of the Akashic onslaught, and the violence was so great on both sides that members would reincarnate with their souls stained by their past lives' actions. Eventually, the Chakravanti summoned a great manifestation of Shiva itself and drove the Brotherhood from the Ganges River basin. The war left both groups scarred, physically and spiritually, and the enmity continued into the modern nights. The Akashics might have a stereotype of inner peace and calm in modern times, but the rest of their history is defined by warfare as well. Against the Iron Dragons, a group of Chinese predecessors to the technocracy and Order of Reason. The Wulong, legalist sorcerers of the Middle Kingdom whom they battled for dominance in China over the imperial court. It wasn't until the formation of the traditions when the Akashic found a more peaceful calling, acting as mediators and peacemakers for the younger traditions they'd recently allied with. Their admission to the traditions was surprisingly smooth, with only a small spat with the Hermetics and Choristers, who they shared almost no beliefs with. It took great efforts for them to avoid their old enemies, the Ufautoi. Their acceptance from the traditions did enrage the Wulong, however, forever distancing the powerful group from the Council of Nine. In modern times, the Akashics have had a lot of success for a mystical practice, exporting their beliefs and philosophies across the globe and being relatively well received. The tenets of mental discipline, meditation, and martial arts have all been accepted by the masses, giving them some pushback against the technological consensus. They find some of their allies in the traditions frustratingly arrogant and others ill-disciplined as dangerous, but act as a mediating force for the more outlandish risk-taking. The paradigm and practice of the Akashics is one that's actually pretty easy to get to grips with, but that needs some more deeper research and understanding to really embrace and expand upon. As I've said before, the image of the warrior monk is one audiences can often relate to, having seen versions of it in many films and popular media, from the original Hong Kong kung fu flicks to modern animated films. Diluted versions of this trope also appear in more fantastical media, most famously the Jedi of Star Wars, who give an easy understanding of the basics of the Brotherhood's ideas. However, diving deeper into the philosophies and religions that are the core of the Akashics' beliefs and what they base their philosophies on, most largely Taoism and Buddhism, is important for a deeper understanding of the group's belief system that you will not get from flashy martial arts films. With this paradigm, an Akashic gains powers through embracing inner truths, casting aside their ego, and rejecting life's distractions. One of the great strengths of the Akashics is that they are so recognizable, but that also becomes one of their greatest weaknesses as a game faction. It can often be hard to break out of the warrior monk stereotypes, and this stereotype is easy to play superficially without diving deeper into the underlying belief systems, as I've said before. This is a typical theme, however, for Eastern and Oriental characters and groups portrayed in modern media, and the Akashics are not devoid of Orientalism in their portrayal. It actually plays out better when you don't remove them from their traditional stomping grounds of China and Eastern Asia, where their context becomes more appropriate, surrounded by the Wulong, who themselves are based on a counter-philosophy, legalism to the Akashics' Taoism, Chakravanti, and the Elemental Dragons. As I've said before, when you play a character from a different culture, you should not satisfy yourself with a superficial look at their guiding system beliefs, but do a deep dive to give yourself a more nuanced and realistic and fleshed out character. All that said, your character by no means needs to come from an East Asian culture, or from any place that I mentioned as being the Akashics' historic homes. The Akashics have spread their recruitment net wide, and although you should still strive to understand the group's core philosophies as much as you can, Asian spiritual philosophies are practiced all over the world, where they have picked up their own nuances and traits. On a personal level, Akashics strive more directly than any other tradition for personal growth, aside from perhaps the cult of ecstasy, so when building them, I recommend taking this into account. Akashic hopefuls are ripe territory for personal flaws and role-playing based on overcoming them. Casting aside one's ego and pride, but also physical addictions, personal damage from your upbringing or background, and learned prejudices being there at character creation would all give you a great starting point for interesting personal roleplay storylines. And lastly, a quick mention on martial arts. Martial arts are a core aspect of the tradition, due to its lore-like history, but also the idea of striving and self-discipline that they encourage. I would recommend, however, to NST to allow your players to step outside of the kung fu style of martial arts encouraged by the mechanics of Do, and even to get creative with non-combat based abilities these skills could grant you. Many kung fu and other martial arts films are rich sources for inspiration for ideas for this. I really like the idea of Do mechanically, and would really enjoy seeing the training and paradigm of other traditions manifest in a similar, non-arete manner of using magic. Perhaps a project for another time though. Thank you so much for listening to my guide to the Akashic Order. And although relatively brief, I hope it's given you some guidance on the tradition as well as ideas about how to learn more about them and play them. As I've said before, please leave a comment for the next group for me to upload a video about below, and I'll try to get the video out as quickly as I can. And please, if you did like the video, then please click the like and subscribe if you like the content more and want to see more of. This has been the Hermetic Hipster, and thank you for watching.